Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
What is up, and welcome into a very special off-season edition, perhaps the last off-season edition. We are the One and Done Show. We are your fast break of college basketball information. I am your host, Eric Romoff. You can catch me on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav, and he is the captain of our ship. He has not slept in days building out all these CBV DFS lineups. He is MC Holland34 on Twitter. Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, a few more days. How you feeling?
It feels like Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve, I guess I should say. But really excited. I've got, I think 33 lineups last time I counted. So I got to get started on that tomorrow. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we've basically made it. It's been a long off season, but it's been a fun one. Had a chance to interview a lot of journalists. We had a chance to talk to some coaches. It's just been a lot of fun doing our top 20 countdown, the transfer board, like all of that stuff. So it's been so much fun to do. So it's been a great offseason, but I'm definitely ready to kick it off here with some hoops action.
Man, all of this hard work is about to bear fruit. I feel exponentially more dialed into the college basketball ranks heading into this season than we did last season. And the last order of business for us is we still need to preview the Big East. So that is exactly what we are doing here. We're going to go team by team through all 11 teams. We're going to break them out into 4 different tiers, and then we will circle back around at the end, and Mike's going to give us his first team all Big East, no less than 14 players on that list. But starting with the first team in our tiers, the Creighton Blue Jays, head coach Greg McDermott, entering year 13. This one surprised me as I saw it on the rundown. Feels like he got there not that long ago, but last year, 23-12 overall, 12-7 in the conference. Made it into the tournament, but they lost in the round of 32 to the eventual champion Jayhawks. On the KenPom side, 112th in offensive efficiency, real strong defensively, 19th overall, and played at about a middle-of-the-road pace, 178th in tempo. So, Mike, top 10 in our ranks, what do we need to know about the Blue Jays?
Yeah, I think you hit it right when you started, right? 19th in defensive efficiency, and I think that starts with Ryan Kalkbrenner. Going into his junior year, the 7-footer, shot blocker, growing offensive game. Man, he really just sets the tone and makes this team really tough on the defensive end. But the big news, and we covered it all offseason, was the transfer of South Dakota State guard wing player Baylor Shireman. He was in our top 10 transfer out of our 100 board that we had up. And, man, this guy's dynamic. We've talked about him a lot on different shows. Can pretty much do everything on the court. It's going to really open up this offense, and it's going to be an absolute weapon. So we expect them to be in the top 75 in offensive efficiency. But also you got to look at it, right? They have the big 3 sophomores coming back. The freshmen last year that really showed out, that was Arthur Kaluma. You had Ryan Nimhart and Trey Alexander. And I'm looking for big things out of those guys. And then you got some sleepers coming behind here. You got a transfer in Francisco Farabello from TCU. He's going to bring some outside shooting. Mason Miller, who's the son of Mike Miller, redshirted last year, and he's a stretch 4. So they definitely have some more pieces on the offensive side to get it done. What say you on this team?
Yeah, I mean, that addition of Shireman is just absolutely huge. Like this team is rightfully so the number 1 team in our ranking for the Big East. But I mean, we need to take an objective look. Last year there were a couple of areas of weakness in this squad. Turned the ball over a lot, 302nd in the league in turnover percentage. Didn't really get any shots up or didn't get any shots to go through 305th in 3-point percentage last year. So these are things that they're going to have to clean up if they want to make it past the round of 32. Are those things that you think will still trouble them this season, or maybe they have a better shot of cleaning up one over the other?
I think Shireman's definitely going to help the 3-point percentage and Mason Miller here. Obviously, the 3 sophomores continued shooting in the college ranks. The biggest jump typically is from the freshman year to your sophomore year. So if they can improve incrementally, this team's should rise up. I'm not going to say they're going to be a top 150 team, right? But even being in the 200s is going to be a drastic improvement. On the turnover side, I think they have a chance to be better. I know Shireman can sometimes be a little turnover prone. But with Nimhart and Alexander getting that year underneath them, it feels like they're going to be a little bit better on that side. And also, you can't forget they have a veteran guard, Sharif Mitchell. He's kind of been battling injury the last few seasons, and he's going to be a key piece for them as someone that's very experienced that can, kind of handle the rock whenever these guys need to take a break. And I think that's definitely going to help them out as well.
I mean, statistically speaking, almost nowhere to go but up in those two categories. So certainly fair to expect improvement. And your point is spot on, right? Even a moderate uptick in either of these categories would move the needle for the Blue Jays. Our second team here in the Big East, the Villanova Wildcats. Head coach Kyle Neptune heading into year one. We all remember Jay Wright retiring somewhat surprisingly over the course of the offseason. Last year, these Wildcats went 30-8 overall, 16-4 in the conference. They made it to the Final Four. They also lost to the eventual champion Kansas Jayhawks. So Kansas just picking off the Big East left and right in March Madness last year. Super, super solid team. 9th in offensive efficiency, 23rd in defensive efficiency, played at a snail's pace, 347th in tempo. So a lot of things to like about this team from last year. Bit of uncertainty up top with Coach Neptune coming in. What do we need to know about the Wildcats?
Yeah, I think there's uncertainty with Neptune, but not really around the program, right? He was a disciple of Jay Wright. So I'm not saying he's going to run the exact same system, but there's going to be some similarities. And he's basically handpicked by Jay Wright to take over this program. So while it was a surprise to many, it looks like that had kind of been in the works for a little while. They're getting two quality freshmen, not even quality, I would say star power freshmen. Cam Whitmore, who's battling a little bit of an injury right now, but we're going to see him soon, and he just kind of explodes off the page, really set the world on fire this offseason. And Mark Armstrong, who's kind of seems like he's a forgotten man, another dynamic player, is going to handle some of that point guard position. And then you got some veterans coming back, man, like Caleb Daniels played a ton of basketball, was really good in the tournament last year. Brandon Slater had an awesome game against Kansas. So, if he can take another step forward, that's going to be great. And the most important piece is going to be Eric Dixon. He's a big man, but he's only 6'7", 6'8". So, man, he's got to clean up the glass, and it's going to be pretty tough. But I think overall, when you look at it, this is a very solid team. As long as Whitmore and Armstrong can really, really come on early in the season, I think they have a chance to develop. And then you maybe get a bonus, midway, maybe a little bit past the midway point of the year with Justin Moore coming back from that Achilles injury. What do you like or dislike about this team?
Yeah, so we've talked about this team specifically in our betting preview. This is a team that if Justin Moore were healthy and available, would have much shorter odds than what they currently do. Obviously, it was a pretty significant injury, so his timetable to return is going to be a little bit longer, and we also have to ask whether he'll be back to himself when he is on the court. I kind of think that he will, so I like placing that bet, as we've discussed before. But also, you mentioned Dixon, right? 6'7", 6'8" there in the middle, the biggest guy on the team. And the thing that gives me a bit of concern there is that being your primary big man, your defensive stalwart on a team that plays so slow, right? Like, is he going to be giving up a lot of offensive rebounds? Can he block shots against his opponents, right? Like, it feels like that might be an area of concern. Am I reading into that, or do you think that he might struggle there given his size?
No, yeah, they struggled shot blocking last year for sure, but they play a specific style, and he's a load in the paint, right? So, I mean, he's going to be able to box out, but, man, they're just going to have to be really strong. And what they have been is really strong on the perimeter with their guards playing that pressure defense, and they're going to have to do that again. And they have some ultra athletes coming in that can really fit into that slot. I think really what it comes down to is, can Coach Neptune kind of keep this thing going? Because, Villanova, I would say, one of the top 3 programs in the last 15 to 20 years, right? As far as consistency, 2 national titles, right? So he's got big shoes to fill, but he's handpicked for a reason.
Yeah, it definitely does. And again, if you're looking to get into the futures market, go take a look at those Wildcats. It's one of my favorite bets to place. We'll keep moving on here in the Big East. Our third team on the board, the Xavier Musketeers. Head coach Sean Miller is back at it again. He's heading into his first year, but was the coach here from 2006 to 2009. So friendly waters or familiar waters for Coach Miller. Last year, this team went 23-13 overall, 8-11 in conference play, and again, really solid. 37th in offensive efficiency, 82nd in defensive efficiency. Played fast enough, 100th in tempo. So, kind of interesting that this team was as effective as they were last year, yet we're welcoming in a new head coach. Maybe start us off there, Mike, and then tell us everything else we need to know about the Musketeers.
Yeah, I think this Musketeer team was a little disappointing last year. I mean, look, what they're bringing back, I don't really want to harp on last year, right? What they're bringing back this year is pretty tough on the offensive end, at least. I mean, you got Jack Nunge and Zach Freemantle, and that's going to be a very, very tough front court to handle. I mean, Nunge can stretch the floor. He's got a good post game. Freemantle can hit that, that 16 to 18 footer. It's kind of hurt last year for a majority of the season, and we just didn't really see him at full health. So it's going to be good to see him back, and that's just going to be a dynamic duo on the offensive end. May have some struggles on the defensive side, but also you got a breakout candidate. We've talked about him, Colby Jones, 6'6", like guard / wing. I mean, he really can just kind of do it all on both ends of the floor. And then Coach Miller did a good job bringing in Soli Boom from UTEP, averaged almost 20 points per game. Someone that, can create his own shot. And that's something that this team, is going to need because you can't always play through these two big guys. I mean, you're going to have someone that, is going to be able to, take and make open shots and create for others. So, I think for me, there's a lot of positives on this team. Are you seeing anything that maybe is a concern here?
I mean, I think we have to talk about a couple of things, right? Like this team was, not good from three, right? I mean, not quite to the level of Creighton that we talked about earlier, but still, 250th in 3-point percentage. And I think we have to talk about, Paul Scruggs heading out, right? Like he's a cornerstone of this program. So maybe starting with the last one, Mike, tell us about what Scruggs meant to these Musketeers and who, if anyone, is kind of primed to step up in his absence.
Yeah, it's big shoes to fill. I mean, you knew what you were getting with Scruggs, right? Made timely shots, could get to the rim. Just a really solid college basketball player. I think I look for Colby Jones to not necessarily take over his position, but to take over his role. It's going to kind of be point guard by committee. I mean, they don't really have a true, per se, point guard. Adam Kunkel, he's more of an outside shooter. We played a lot of him in TFS last year. He's going to get some more run. Soli Boum is more of an off-ball guard, but, he can play a little bit of point. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough to kind of figure out who's going to be doing the creating. I think you're going to play through the post a lot, but like I said, I think something that could be a struggle is, who runs this point and kind of takes over during big spots.
Yeah, it's certainly an open question that will wrap up our top tier here in the Big East. So before we move on, a couple of housekeeping items. If you're joining us on YouTube, don't be weird. Go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. You're already watching the video. But more importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. Of those three teams, do you agree with where we have them ranked in the Big East? Is there any other team from the ones that we haven't talked about that you think should make their way into that top tier? Or are you pulling any of these three teams down? Let us know in the comments. We'll flash it up here. We'll talk about it a little bit more. But we will now move on to our second tier here in the Big East, the solid tier. The fourth team we're going to talk about, St. John's Red Storm, one of our favorites to play teams against in the DFS world. Mike Anderson heading back into year number 4. Last year, 17-15 overall, 8-11 in the conference. Another really solid team here in terms of efficiency. 46th on the offensive side, 72nd on the defensive side. And the reason why we're always firing up people against the Red Storm, first in tempo. So before you tell me anything else about the St. John's team, Mike, can they keep up the pace in 2022?
Absolutely. I think they're actually, if you could go above first place this year, I think they can, just because of what they did in the transfer portal. So you already had Posh Alexander, who, just a dynamic player, two-way player, growing offensive game. He's going to have to be able to make some outside shots because looking at this roster, and we talked about it this offseason, they're going to have to find some shooting. But on the defensive end, Posh is just a menace, man. Over 2 steals a game. He's going to be in the running with Kalkbrenner for, Big East Defensive Player of the Year. And then you portal in 2 guys in David Jones, the wing from DePaul, and then Andre Curbelo the oft injured guard last year from Illinois. And Curbelo is a true point guard and someone likes to push the pace. You know, Alexander there. Man, they're going to play fast. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's the way this team is built. That's the way Mike Anderson likes to play. I think a key thing to look for is how does Joel Soriano, who's going to play the middleman, kind of like an Eric Dixon, right? He's 6'9". You know, when you're playing a stretch four and David Jones, it's going to be 6'6", and you really don't have, you know, much size at the four position that you're comfortable with, and you don't want to play two bigs. He's going to have to be a key player on the defensive end, and it looks like he had a pretty good offseason from all reports. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting team on the offensive side and tempo side. You worry a little bit defensively outside of our guy Posh Alexander, but yeah, what are you seeing with this team?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be an absolute blast to follow these Red Storm yet again. Like the guys that we remember from last year are by and large coming back, right? We lost Champagnie. You know, he was easily one of the top players in the Big East, but a lot of the core pieces returned for St. John's, and a lot of the guys that we were really hoping to take a step forward look to have improved their game over the course of the offseason. We'll see if that translates into on-court play. Probably the biggest question for me with St. John's is a bit more stylistically, right? We talk about Posh, we talk about Curbelo coming in from the transfer portal. I mean, can these two guys stylistically find a way to play together?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest question on whether this team makes the tournament is, can these two guys play with each other? And I mean, you're probably gonna have to play because you're gonna play David Jones, and you can stretch the floor a little bit at that 4 spot. But that three man is going to be critical, right? Do they go to someone like Montez Mathis? Not really an outside shooter. Rafael Penzone is interesting because he can shoot. Do they bring in Adai Wusu, who started last year but came off the bench at times and isn't a great three-point shooter as well, but brings it on the defensive end, is a really good slasher. It's just, who do you play with those two guys? Because I don't think you want to bring one off the bench, and that may end up happening, honestly. You may need to bring one of these guys off the bench if it doesn't work out in the beginning of the season. So it's going to be a real interesting storyline to follow. I think it's all about who plays next to them in the backcourt at that 3 spot, and we'll just have to wait and see. I think that's going to be a critical factor.
Yeah, however it shakes out, I personally have faith in Mike Anderson to find something that will work sooner rather than later. Moving on here in the Big East, our number 5 team, the UConn Huskies, Dan Hurley entering year 5. Last year, 23-19 overall, a little bit better in conference play, 13-6 in the conference. They did make their way into the tournament, but they were bounced in the first round, fell to New Mexico State. Solid offensively and defensively, 22nd and 43rd, respectively, in those efficiency categories. But the polar opposite of St. John's in terms of pace, 300th in tempo. So feels like this UConn Huskies team kind of has some stuff to build off of. Am I reading that right? And what are those areas that they can kind of use as a platform?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously it starts with our guy coming back, Sanogo. What a massive jump he had last year, and if he takes a similar jump or even a small jump, he's going to be in the running for Big East Player of the Year again. He's back. He's a two-way player, man. He's a force on the defensive end. He can shoot. Can obviously open up your offense. You can play through him. But I think the biggest thing for Coach Hurley is the backcourt, right? Like, you're bringing in a bunch of different guys. I mean, Tristan Newton from East Carolina. You got Aline from Virginia Tech, who's more of just an off-ball, kind of a floor spacer. Hassan Diarra, who we'd like to play a lot at a very cheap price for Texas A&M last year. He comes in and can be a spark plug off the bench. And then Joey Calcaterra comes over from the University of San Diego, who's a knockdown shooter. So, how do you play all these guys? How does it fit, especially when you have someone like Jordan Hawkins, who's projected to really start at that point guard position. And it looks like he could be a breakout candidate along with Andre Jackson, who's more of a 6'6", 6'7" point forward type. So a lot of different options. Obviously, you're gonna be primarily featuring Sanogo. But yeah, there's just a little more question marks and probably, I think if you look at the odds, I think they're tied for 4th. We like them 5th here, and they have some upside to grow, but there's also some questions here.
Yeah, I mean, with that much roster turnover, right? Like it brings uncertainty and instability. We talked about some of the new faces coming in. I mean, Cole, Martin, Wally, all out the door to the professional ranks. Is kind of curious, right? Like these aren't guys that were necessarily setting the world on fire in their time at UConn. Is there something about this system that Dan Hurley's running that that translates nicely to the NBA ranks, or what is it about these three guys that has them off to the pros?
Yeah, I think the biggest loss is RJ Cole because that's your lead guard, right? Martin was kind of your heart and soul. With defensive presence, can knock down open shots. I think the biggest thing is stylistically, there's going to be a change here. You played Sanogo with Whaley, and those were kind of like 2 7-footers essentially, which is why you were, I believe, second in offensive rebounding percentage. And they're not really going to play that way because they don't really have – I guess they could if they want to play this freshman, but it looks like they're going to play more of a stretch 4 type. Try to open this thing up and play a little bit faster with a bunch of these cards that they're bringing in. So their offensive rebounding could suffer from that. So losing Whaley is interesting because it's going to be a stylistic difference. We'll have to see how that plays out. And there's just a lot of roster turnover, right? Like, we don't really know the defined roles. We've kind of known those roles in the past few years, and it's just going to be a kind of a different makeup and a different look as to how this is going to go.
I mean, 300th in tempo last year. If they're planning on playing at a fast pace, that in and of itself is a considerable transition and a storyline to watch. Our number 16 in the sixth team in the Big East, the Providence Friars, Ed Cooley entering year 12, 27-6 overall, 14-3 in conference play. Look at this team, another really solid Big East basketball team. 36th in offensive efficiency, 44th in defensive efficiency. A little bit more like the Huskies, playing at a 276th tempo, so not exactly moving the ball at a quick pace. So feels like it was a relatively successful year, based on record, based on some of the the counting stats and the way that we measure these teams. What is it that we want to say about the Friars heading into this upcoming season?
Yeah, for the Friars, they were a surprise team last year. It looks like they got bounced out in the Sweet 16. But you lose your starting 5, and that's kind of terrifying. But they did surprise. So I think the key thing is they're getting probably I would say, if not their best player, their second best player is coming back, and that's Jared Bynum. I'm expecting huge things because at certain parts last year, he looked like their best player on the court. I mean, he was hitting big-time shots. He had some pretty big scoring games. He's someone that we played a lot in the DFS world, and I just think that he's kind of going to be the engine to this team. Coming along with him, though, is going to be basically an entirely new roster around him. So, how does that kind of look? But you're bringing in a bunch of talent. I mean, you got Devin Carter, who I thought was underutilized at South Carolina. He's going to really be an interesting follow at playing the guard position. Then Bryce Hopkins, I mean, played at Kentucky, was a highly rated recruit, and so not a lot of time there when you have Sheboy, kind of roaming the middle. So. Look for him to be a breakout candidate. Clifton Moore was really good at LaSalle last year, averaged 13 points per game. Noah Locke is a knockdown shooter from Louisville via Florida the year before. So there's some talent. We just haven't seen this talent play together. It might be a question of fit. I don't know. How do you see this fit turning out with this team?
Yeah, I mean, look, the storyline here is the turnover. It's reasonable to expect there to be, for it to take some time for the Friars to gel. I guess the question that I have for you on this subject, it's probably a bit more macro than necessarily to do with the Friars, but in this age of the transfer portal, these are players that the coaches are going out and handpicking and vice versa, right? The player is choosing the school in light of the coach that's going to be there, the situation they're walking into. Do you think that sets up to make kind of a smoother or shorter transition for the kids coming in from the portal than, say, like an incoming recruiting class?
Yeah, I think for me, Providence's transfer portal class has a ton of upside. I mean, all of these guys could honestly, like 4 or 5 of these guys could have been in the top 100 board. If I had a top 200 board, they probably all would have been in it. I think they just trust and saw what Ed Cooley did last year, and they want to play for this guy. I mean, He looks like someone that I would want to play for. So I just think that this team is going to take some time to gel. Like you said, we're not going to know what this team looks like until maybe just a little bit past the halfway point, maybe entering conference play by the time they shake out rotations. Because, a lot of these guys are actually coming over and looking for, leading roles or larger roles, and how they fit into those is going to be a telling sign.
Yeah, it certainly is, but feels like Ed Cooley can coach them up and get them moving in the right direction. Just whether or not they'll have enough runway for it to pay dividends this year. That will do it for our second tier here in the Big East, the solid tier: St. John's, UConn, and the Providence Friars. Again, checking in on YouTube. Want to hear from you. We're 6 teams into the 11 teams here in the Big East. We've got them ranked thus far in the top 2 tiers. How do you feel about these rankings? You agree? Someone need to move up, move down? Let us know what you think. We'll post your comment here on the stream. Talk about it a little bit. This will move us into our third tier, the mid-tier, and we'll start off with the Seton Hall Pirates. Shaheen Holloway, everyone's favorite, coming over from the St. Peter's Peacocks. He is now the head man for the Pirates. Last year, these Pirates went 21-11 overall, 11-8 in conference play. Made the dance and promptly left the dance, bounced in the first round. 91st in offensive efficiency, 31st in defensive efficiency, played slightly above average in terms of pace, 167th in tempo. So Seton Hall welcoming in a new head man. Is that kind of the headline for the Pirates, or are there some other things that are more notable as we head into the new season?
No, it's definitely the headline. And does he bring over some of that Peacock magic that we saw last year? And it's an entirely different roster. I think that was kind of the story more than most. Obviously, a lot of players transferred, right? But I feel like the Big East had the best combination of like impact transfers and then teams that just completely overhauled their roster. So, and that happens a lot. Obviously, when you change coaches, you're going to see those players leave and typically a bunch of players come in. So we'll see it. But I think the one thing they can rest their hat on is that this is going to be a pretty tough defensive team. We saw it last year, 31st in defensive efficiency. You're getting Samuel back. Nadifo's coming over, who played at St. Peter's last year, and he's Defensive Player of the Year in that conference. And it's just a really good portal. I mean, Alamir Dawes is coming over. He's a really good shooter coming over from Clemson. There's just some pieces that are coming in that we're just going to have to see if they fit. I think the biggest non-question mark is Kadari Richmond. He has big upside. It's just a matter of, can he tap into all of it? We see it at flashes, but then we see him be turnover prone and just taking bad shots. But we know it's there because we can see it. I mean, he's the closest thing we're going to find to like a triple-double type threat in this league if he's playing 30 to 35 minutes. He's just that good. 6'6" guard, a lead guard that can rebound, can really pass. Just got to work on his shot and see if he can create some things. And that has an opportunity for Seton Hall if he can kind of unlock his magic to the fullest extent. Maybe they can climb up a few spots here.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Holloway came in and immediately got after it in the portal. We all know that is a point of endearment for me. I love it when these coaches come in and put their fingerprints on the program. We talk about some of the losses. Kale, Roden last year. These were guys that took a lot of big shots for them, and it kind of shows. It showed in their advanced metrics, right? Assisted field goal rate, 352nd in the country, right? So basically, when they needed a bucket, those were the two guys that were going out and getting it. They are no longer here, so that leaves a void that needs to be filled. But I guess, as opposed to a guy or two stepping up, do you think that the Pirates play a little bit more team ball in, under Shaheen Holloway?
Yeah, I think you're going to have to in year one. I think it's going to mirror similarly to what he did at St. Peter's, but I think Richmond's going to take some of those big shots. Now, whether he can knock those down and become a better shooter, that's a question mark, right? How do some of these transfers, like Okudale from Pittsburgh, like how does he come in? He's played obviously in the ACC, so there's just question marks when you got a new coach coming in, and expectations are high because people are going to see what he did with, I would say, less talent, right? Coming into the Big East, and you've got some pretty solid players coming back, so. Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. I think they're probably the biggest mystery of this conference is how this team's going to shake out.
Speaking of high expectations, we'll move on to our number 8 team, the Georgetown Hoyas, one of the uh, powerhouse teams in college basketball, at least once upon a time, featuring a head coach that was once a powerhouse player. Patrick Ewing, entering year 6, hasn't done the best job of living up to those expectations. Last year, 6-25 overall, 0-19 in the conference, and their KenPom metrics support that, right? 140th in offensive efficiency, 228th in defensive efficiency. Bonus points for them, though, 43rd in tempo. So play very fast, very poor on the defensive side, things that we typically look for when identifying a game to target against in the DFS world. But practically speaking, as we're previewing the Big East here, what do we need to know about the Hoyas?
Yeah, very disappointing last year. Mina Mohammed was a really nice player. You had some nice guards like Donald Carey, who's now going to headed off to Maryland. You had Dante Harris, who's on a leave of absence right now, so not really sure what's going on with that. So what do you have to do? You have to completely overhaul your roster, and that's exactly what Ewing did. And he's bringing in what I think is one of the best portal classes in the country. It starts with Brandon Murray, real good scorer here from LSU. He's sliding over here. And then you got Amir Spears from Duquesne, very talented lead guard, averaged almost 13 points per game last year. Jay Heath kind of struggled at Arizona State last year, still averaged 11 points per game, but just not quite the season we thought they were going to have. And then you got Qudus Wahab, who transferred to Maryland last year from Georgetown, and now he's back to kind of anchor the middle. And then one of our favorite guys, Akok Cope, coming off of injury, only averaged 3 points, but he's actually a guy that can block shots, 6'9", can shoot the three. If he progresses even more after injury, I think he's very, very dangerous. But, man, that's a lot of new guys, and for a team that didn't win any games, right, you're going to completely, have a different team. I think that's what you have to do. But like we've talked about the last few teams, there's just going to be a bunch of question marks.
So, yeah, I mean, look, chemistry is going to be an issue, or at least an open question. I think the question I want to ask you, I know this sounds like blasphemy to Georgetown faithful, but is Coach Ewing's chair getting a little bit warm?
Yeah, I think they're the ones that are heating it up. After the year they had before that, where they made that nice run and got into the tournament, and then to see what happened last year, I think some people are questioning why he's even still there. And so this is a big year. I think if he doesn't get it, I don't even know if they don't even finish in the top 6, he's probably not here next year. So we'll see. It's a big year for him.
Yeah, to say the least. We will move on here to our 9th ranked team. That is the Butler Bulldogs, taking a page from some other teams here in the Big East. Head coach Thad Matta back at it again, entering year 1 for the second time, was with Butler back in 2001. So pretty good stretch of time, but Thad Matta back at the reins. Last year, 14-19 overall, 6-14 in the conference, 187th on the offensive efficiency side, 95th on the defensive efficiency side, 334th in tempo. So with Coach Matta heading in, with some other things that are changing here for the Bulldogs, can we really glean much from any of these statistics last year?
No, I don't think you can. And it's another roster overhaul. I guess, stop us now, right? We keep saying that. But what's a little bit different than the last two teams we've kind of covered is that you're getting basically your big three at the guard position back. You're getting Harris, Lukosius, and Taylor. I think they have a chance to take a step forward and make this team competitive. But really it's going to come down to if those guys can make any shots from the outside range. They're not very good three-point shooters. And then the portal, I really like what Matta did in the portal. Manny Bates, injured from North Carolina State, but before that was one of the best shot blockers in the country. And then Ali, coming over from Akron, can do some things at that 4 spot to kind of open them up offensively. To me, they're an interesting team. I just don't know if there's a star player that you can go to on a nightly basis. I know, they're faithful and want Chuck Harris to be that guy, but it's just a tough spot for them to be in, and it's probably going to take a few years for Matta if he's even still got the chops to get it done. We're going to have to wait and see.
Yeah, so Like we said, you can't exactly take a ton from last year, but it felt like they were kind of trying to trot out sort of a 3-and-D style team. And looking at this roster, I'm not sure if they can really get it done with regard to the threes. Am I getting a good read on this team, or is that a bridge too far?
No, yeah, exactly. These guys should have to improve, especially in Harris and Lukosius. I think they were both under 32% last year. So they're going to have to be better. Bates isn't the guy that really shoots three, so you're not really going to have any stretch players from that 5 position there. And he lost 4 starters from last year. So, guys like Aaron Thompson, been there for a few years. Bryce Enzi was there. We played him a lot, right? Because he was always underpriced in the DraftKings list there. And yeah, I just think that there's not a lot of star power, and these guys are going to have to shoot better. And typically when we get down to the bottom of these conferences, right, it's teams that struggle to shoot and struggle to defend. So the defensive part I don't really feel is going to be an issue this year, especially with Bates. But offensively, yeah, we have to see it before we can actually say, okay, maybe this team can take a step forward.
Down to the bottom of the conference, indeed. That will wrap up our mid-tier. So we're now 9 teams deep. Again, we'll ask you, jump into those comments, let us know which team's your favorite here in the Big East, which ones you're flying the flag for, and where we are right and wrong in our rankings thus far. Our 10th team, the Marquette Golden Eagles. Shaka Smart heading into year 2, 19-13 overall, 11-8 in the conference. They did make the dance. They ran into the buzzsaw that was the North Carolina Tar Heels in the first round, so they were promptly bounced out. KenPom metrics, 64th in offensive efficiency, 55th in defensive efficiency, 25th in tempo, and home to one of the greatest mid-game DFS pivots of all time. I want to know, what happened to this Golden Eagles team to where they're all the way down at 10 right now? They've got the supporting stats that would lead you to believe that they should be a bit higher.
Yeah, they lost their top 2 dogs. Justin Lewis and Daryl Morcell are gone. And we talked about star power from the last roster. Well, that was the star power last year. And it's just tough to find it. I think Cam Jones has a chance to be a big-time breakout candidate. We've talked a lot about him this offseason. You're going to have to look to maybe some young guys like Joplin and Ellis, maybe get a little more opportunity to shine. We kind of know what Prosper is. Can he take another step? Maybe Tyler Kolek is, your pass first guard, a really good assist man, but can he grow offensively? It's just really tough to see that. But anytime you play defense like this, right, Shaka's always had really good defensive teams. I mean, that's how he made his name at VCU, by playing that, that havoc type defense where you full court press for 40 minutes. And that got him some big wins last year and ultimately got him into the tournament. So anytime you play that, I mean, it's tough. It's college, right? Being full court press for 40 minutes is never fun and can create turnovers. So I expect this team to be pretty good again on the defensive side because he's a great defensive coach. I don't know, man. Offensively, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, look, these guys are going to come in and either be or very quickly get into very well conditioned state, right? If they're going to play that full court press for all 40 minutes of a game, so he'll have that working for him. But I mean, it's just such a void with Lewis and Morcell heading out. I mean, look, our guy Shaka Smart, whatever you want to say about him, he can. It seems like he can coach up some players, right? So. There is a bit of a void with the guys that are heading out the door, but I also like him to get the most out of this roster and potentially have a couple of guys emerge. How quickly is kind of the question mark, and that's ultimately what's going to have them down here near the bottom of our rankings. And speaking of which, the very bottom of our rankings, the DePaul Blue Demons. Tony Stubblefield entering year 2, 15-16 overall, 6-14 last year. 97th on the offensive side, 122nd on the defensive side with regard to their efficiency ratings, 91st in tempo. So kind of middle of the pack in a lot of ways in terms of how they measure up. But what's going on with the Blue Demons that has them down here in the cellar?
Oh, man, I like Coach Stubblefield, man. I think that he's going to be really good for this program. And I think he's done a great job in the portal. I mean, it's actually an underrated portal. You get, Umoja Gibson comes over from Oklahoma. He averaged 13 points per game last year. Caleb Murphy, South Florida, was one of our top 100 transfers. So you got two guards coming in that were on our top 100 board. So you got an opportunity there, right? And that might push, someone like Jalen Terry, who had to play a lot last year, coming off the bench. So now your bench has gotten stronger there. I think also Errol Penn comes over from LIU, kind of late in the process, averaged 17 points per game. Can he make that mid-major jump, though, to Big East play, especially in a Big East where there's going to be some pretty strong defensive teams that we've talked about? But yeah, I think he's actually starting something here. It's just going to take some time, and I think it's going to take 2-3 years. Really, really nice recruit in Zion Cruz, coming in a 4-star prospect who, you can probably build off of. But yeah, for right now, it's just tough with the star power that you lost, headed out the door. So what are your thoughts on this DePaul team?
Yeah, I mean, JFL and David Jones were some of our favorite guys to play in DFS last year. They were actually the other part of that pivot story I told a moment ago. But sticking to the Blue Demons here, they turned the ball a fair amount last year. I don't know if that necessarily gets better with so much roster turnover, but on the 3-point shooting side, 273rd in 3-point rate last year. Do you think with some of the incoming guys with this recruiting class, they maybe have the guys to improve there at least, or is it going to be pretty tough from the outside for a while?
Yeah, I think it's still going to be pretty tough. I think Gibson can knock down some shots. Murphy, averaged 11 points per game, but I don't think he's going to set the world on fire from 3. Javon Johnson is someone that I think has massive upside. I just don't know if he's going to get there. He had some pretty good games last year. Been struggling with injuries. We just don't know. It feels like there's a lot of, can this happen with this player, or what does this player look like on this team? And ultimately, when you're ranking these guys, right, it comes down to the question marks. It just feels like this team has more question marks than anyone else. Even though they've got some pretty nice pieces coming together, we just don't know how they're going to fit.
Yeah, legitimate question as to how long that will take, but that will do it for our ranking of all 11 teams here in the Big East. Again, we want to hear from you. Hit that like and subscribe button, but also let us know what team you're out there standing for and how you feel like we did in this ranking for the Big East. Mike, going back to the top, get us out of here. Why don't you run down who you have as your projected first team all Big East this season?
Yeah, I'm going to grab 6 players here. We're going to start with Baylor Shireman, who we talked about at the top, with Creighton coming over from South Dakota State. I think he's going to be an exciting player. Posh Alexander, I think he's going to be probably, if not the best, maybe the second best two-way player in this league. I'm going to challenge Kalkbrenner, who I also have on this list for defensive player of the year in this league. And so with Kalkbrenner growing an offensive game, going to be that big man in the middle for Creighton. Got him at the forward position here along with Adama Sanogo. Also Jack Nunge from Xavier. I think his offensive game is going to grow. He's going to be just a menace down low and from the outside. And then Cam Whitmore. I mean, there's just been too much buzz for this kid. I want to see him play. It's sad that we have to see him injured to kind of start the year. But yeah, him from Villanova, and then Sanogo as the player of the year from UConn. So to round it out, that'll be the 6 there: Shireman, Alexander, Whitmore, Kalkbrenner, Sanogo, and Nunge.
And we are obviously big fans of Big East basketball, but running down that first team all Big East, I mean, I feel like they could stack up with the first team in just about any conference in the country, right? So going to be another fun season of basketball for the Big East. And around the league in CBB, we are just a few days out. If you have not already, get over to drroto.com, get yourself subscribed. Find all of Mike's written work covering these college basketball streets. But more importantly, after you subscribe, you get into our members-only Discord. You want to hear about all 38 variations that Mike is building for his opening slate in DFS? He will tell you his logic, his line of thinking, how he got there in that Discord, and that is easily the best way to get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.